So, May.
He's had a shock in Iraq.
I watched the clips. We'll talk about the Hector thing. It is... I can't even think of a parallel. It's wild.
I never finished the episode. I saw that a few months ago, told you. It was like, I just saw the first 7 minutes of this.
Yeah.
I laughed. Like, I had to stop twice.
It's insane that Hector was allowed anywhere near the leader of anything. He's had a very bad Iraq.
I wouldn't let him near the Limerick leader.
Well, we'll talk about that point in Bertie's life. That's a bad time. He's not the...
He's hanging out with Hector.
Also, Hector keeps saying hanging with, as if like he's like, is he hanging with me or is he not? Is he hanging with Hector or is he not hanging with Hector? Was that a big show? Did he hang with other people?
Oh man, it was huge.
I don't understand.
It was like Living
Hector.
with Lucy.
Yeah, that's exactly what Lisa said. It's like, what the fuck is that reference as well?
Yeah, RG loved alliteration.
Sure.
And given people who weren't particularly good at hosting shows.
No, I mean by like...
That's how Hector is class at what he does. Like,
he's very good at what he does. Absolutely. He can tell a very good story.
He shouldn't be the host of a show where Bertie's going through, like the leader of the nation who's going through a very difficult time because he's
having a shock in Iraq.
Yeah, shock in Iraq. Because he's been called through all of these tribunals, and then they get in Hector to go in to be like, sure, here, got
big gun. And no, but Jesus, we're Dublin's playing Westmeath, what a time.
Yeah.
Now, a third of that show is taken up by the match. If it was all just them going to like Dublin GAA matches, that makes sense. He flies with him to meet like Chirac at the head of the EU at the time. That's insane.
I will say this, that he on his old radio show, he used to have a segment where people could call in. It's like a 20 questions type segment.
Yeah.
But it's not about a character or a famous person or anything like that. It's guess the town I'm from.
Okay.
And they would just give them, so you did just give him some like random little tidbits, and he would like, I tell you what now, you take a double left off that roundabout, you go down, there's a chipper called Mavais. That's not the one you want to go to. You want to go 2 past that.
Yeah.
But not until you stop into McCooley's for 4 pints. Now you can still drive at the time because the car's not really, and he would get it spot on.
Now,
like, I don't know if that's fake or he's legitimately, that's why he's famous. The man's a genius. He knows everything about all the little, in terms of
ins and outs.
There's different types of intelligence. You could put that man into any town in Ireland that's not in Dublin.
And he'd know how to get out of it just like he got out of that. I have a certain set of skills that have helped me get out of small town Ireland. Well, now we made fun of Gift Grub in the last episode, but I do...
He sounds like he's got a certain set of pills.
Yeah, there's a very fun... he's going to take... There's a very good episode of Gift Grub where... Because, you know... When he's doing an impression of a man who's an over-the-top caricature, he nails it. So there's an episode where it's like just the two of them bouncing back and forth, and the game is to see who the real Hector is.
Is it tough to tell?
Yeah, very much. Because of course, because it's like it's not a real person that he's impersonating. It's just Hector being like, it's Misha Hector, told me on show. Neil Shea Hector, told me Hector, and just that back and forth.
There's not enough English thrown in there.
Yeah, well, he had enough Irish to. I don't think Hector can speak Irish.
No, he's definitely fluent, but he just knows that the people watching him, like my ma used to watch that show, or any show he was in for years. That people just love him because he's a cheeky chappy, he's a great lad, and there's like getting people to watch Tina G.
Yeah.
He was getting people to watch Tina G and read subtitles of a language that they'd studied for 12 years and didn't have a fucking word of.
Well, now to get back,
just throw in. Like Jerry Flannery doing the rugby commentary in Tina G.
A little bit of
2 words Oscar and then how are we getting on anyway? Jesus Christ, but it's just fair play to you.
Well, this is going back to our Bros of Tralee, but
don't give away.
Oh, listen, but did you?
That's lock. That's lock and key.
So you haven't seen the end of the episode with Hector, but well, it turns out Bertie is a bit of a Gaeilgeoir himself, where he certainly can go back and forth. He went to an Irish school. He knows a bit of Irish. But so,
or was it an Irish school, or was it a school in Manchester? Or was
actually, we don't have any record of you being in this school.
What it was I was there giving a talk on why more people should be Gaeilgeoir.
But he's speaking back and forth with Hector in a bit of Irish, and this is about 90% through the show. So like down to the last minute or so, and Hector's like, I'm Will Gaeilgeoir too. Now, the mother did ask me. She said, if you see Bertie now, make sure he's okay. And tell him I hope he finds a good woman, and I hope he's all right. And I say that, And he completely switches tone, and they're in Fagan's. It's like his big, we'll bring it down to the pub. And he just out of nowhere is like, come here to me now. Don't say. He said something like, don't say this to anybody. While on camera. While mic'd up. He said, now don't say this to anybody, but the mother made me promise when I saw you. She said, you say it to that man now. You make sure he looks after himself.
Roger Deacon's wide angle close up.
Yeah.
The camera's 6 inches from your face.
Agus an bhfuil Colleen Jackson ish.
Neil.
Because my mother, I don't know, but this is between me and you. My mother, she said, ask him one thing for me, just say, I hope he's all right, and I hope he has a nice Colleen. Because no man is an island.
No man is an island.
No man is an island.
2 daughters is enough.
And what mother in the country wouldn't have wanted that for Bertie Ahern in 2004?
What country woman wouldn't have wanted that for Bertie Ahern?
Well, let's talk about the man. It's May 2002. Everyone's pumped up for the World Cup. Here Come the Good Times is in the charts, but a young Kevin Larney is on his way to buy Nickelback's Silver Side Up. WWF has had to be renamed to WWE due to trademark issues with the World Wildlife Fund. And Israeli soldiers continue to deny the UN access to Jenin after bulldozing a Palestinian refugee camp as part of what they call Operation Defense Shield, but the locals refer to now as the Jenin Massacre. Some things never change, but... It's a fun bonus fact. It turns out that some American troops joined in on that old massacre for the last bit of it, because 6 months after 9/11, they were suddenly interested in what an urban ground war would look like in the Middle East. For reasons that will also come up later in this podcast. Mm-hmm.
I only know about one of those things.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, we didn't have the channels.
Sure.
So we didn't have access to wrestling.
Yeah.
Now, our next door neighbour had some dodgy channels. One of our best friends, great. We can go up there, sneak up like a Sunday evening, and everyone's going to bed. We'll watch WCW, the knockoff, the way better Eric Bischoff. Who needs WWF? And we did see one morning at 4 a.m. There was a WWF was on. Yeah. And we were like, all right, we can just not tell our parents, sneak up, out of a house at 3 a.m. Set your alarm, sneak up, go next door. On the road, walk up the road, go in there. He opens the door, sneak in. His dad doesn't know. We went into the sitting room, we turn it on, and it's just pandas.
She's the kind of the World Wildlife. Yeah.
We just keep changing back and forth, and we're like, it must be on after the pandas. And
the panda gave him the chair. Oh my God,
he's nearly extinct. Here comes the hunter.
Anyway, the boys are back. It's Fianna Fáil and the PDs, Progressive Democrats, back in government again. The first government to be re-elected since the 60s, I believe. Bertie's enemies are banished. Fine Gael loses a load of seats in this election. Michael Noonan has to step down as leader to be replaced by a young Enda Kenny. Rory Quinn has to resign as leader of Labour Party to be replaced by Pat Rabbitte, who will feature heavily in this episode because he's a pretty funny man. Right, they get elected in May of 2002. It's a fairly unanimous, or a fairly decided, I think they're 4 seats shy of full Fianna Fáil majority. So they don't need the independence that they had propping up the last government, but Bertie keeps them sweet anyway in this next government. But this is pretty much a resounding thumbs up. We love Fianna Fáil. Let's get to 2000s on the way. But not all bed of roses. In the first couple of days, they come across arguably the biggest crisis of this second term. Roy Keane walks out of Saipan, May 2002.
It's a tough time.
It's a tough time. We've done a whole episode of this.
We've done 4.
We've done 4.
3 or 4.
They're all behind the paywall. But Bertie's asked to step in. He's negotiated a peace between Protestants and Catholics in the north after some 800 years of feuding. They're like, will you have a knock at getting the FAI team? Because this is probably, arguably, the last chance that Ireland had a good swing at winning a World Cup title, or at least getting into beyond the quarterfinal stages. We had a great team. and Roy Keane, don't make the face. Roy Keane was there amongst them. Bertie says that he went to see them off before they headed to Saipan, and he noted that Roy was sitting by himself. Mm-hmm. He referred to him as a loner. Bertie, also big Man U fan. Where do you reckon his allegiances lie? If push came to shove,
Ireland.
Do you reckon he would rather see Man United win a match or be the presiding Taoiseach over a nation like ours winning a World Cup title for the first time in its history? Yeah, be honest.
Could you imagine? They would have built him 2 stadiums.
He'd still be here now. Yeah, we'll talk about his stadium in a couple of minutes. But
he'd still be in power. Roy Keane to be astonished.
Yeah, maybe he took a couple of money. He should be getting paid more for what he did for this country.
He's not really there to be astonished. He's more there just for the press conferences.
Yeah. But it's hard to... This is this first kind of World Cup that I was cognitive for and that I remember.
Any chance of you boys going to the Dáil today, huh?
It's good.
Soccer fans.
Good. Yeah, that's for the 4 soccer fans that listen to this show. But he does get asked. So in recent interviews in the last couple of years or so, he talks about it a bit more. And he says that he was asked at some point to intervene between Mick McCarthy and Roy Keane. But he was never called up on it. He was there. He was willing. He was ready to go. But they never asked him.
I'd heard that before.
Yeah.
That it's...
absolutely believable. There's some things bigger than nations,
it's
Jason.
Great that he said that. But it's like, I don't think they ever thought about that.
Why not?
It's mad.
What he did for Stormont. There's only one man for the job.
He walked in to sit down with Mick McCarthy, and there was a photo of Jack Charlton on the wall. And said,
I would negotiate.
I would fucking negotiate.
Well, it's not.
There's too many niche references.
Even from a cynical point of view, is Bertie does harp on about the Northern Ireland. We talked about in the last one, the peace process. If he had managed to get Roy Keane back into the Ireland squad at that point and have them go on. 2 people scored against Oliver Kahn in the 2000 World Cup.
Yes, Ronaldo and Robbie Keane.
Yes. There's a very good chance that we could have, with the extra bonus of Roy, gone on to win that thing. Easily beat Spain.
I've made this argument so many nights in my life.
But if Bertie had the chance, I realize now, like he has kind of brought it up in the last couple of years, and maybe he does bring it up always in the context of how he did the Good Friday Agreement.
There was more chance of the Good Friday Agreement. There was less blood spilled.
Yeah. But anyway, that's his first big crisis going into it.
Just to, that was never going to happen. That the FAI and everyone else who was involved in it, you can see Champagne Footballs up there, that just an old boys club, that they're all, like John Delaney wanted in, they used this as a way to seize power, that it was all part of it. Mick McCarthy was never going to back down.
Yeah.
As he shouldn't. But also he should have never done the things that he... Oh, no, I'm not getting into whose side I'm on.
Sure.
I made that very clear that I'm not taking a side. One of them's right.
It's like a very Bertie answer to be like, I'm very much on record. If you want to pay money to see what my opinions are, you can do it.
I've never openly said that I think that Mick McCarthy's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for a manager to walk back from being chastised in the changing room by a player. But at the same time, he was wrong to put Roy in that position. Can't say fairer than that.
Yeah, but he was wrong.
Yeah.
And then he decided to call Roy Keane out knowing he was wrong. Yeah. And he lied. Yeah. And that's...
Well, Bertie...
Roy was a fucking idiot and Mick lied.
Bertie's there for it anyway. He's waiting on the sidelines.
And I'm not saying how I feel about it.
He's waiting in the sidelines to come in and solve this. And everything that we talk about afterwards, everything that Bertie gets blamed for, if he had pulled this off, forget about it. There would be no recession. No one would care if there was. But in June 2002, Robbie Keane scores a goal against Germany. Later to be beaten by Spain in penalties. It was a dark time for the country. Speaking of dark times for the country, the Commissioner to Inquiry into Child Abuse, also known as the Lafoy Commission, and then later the Ryan Commission, was established in 1999 to investigate the extent of abuse of children in institutions such as children's homes, schools, foster care and hospitals, run by the Catholic Church in Ireland from 1936 onwards.
Why is that the cut-off?
from 1936. I don't know. I think the church was before the 20s.
They hadn't kept records of their paedophilia since then.
Yeah, they only started writing things down. Yeah, well, I guess the 20s is still like the movement from British rule to Irish state rule. We did that for about 10 years, and we're like, we'd be better at running these things. The priests. On the 5th of June, 2002, a secret indemnity deal was signed between the then Education Minister Michael Woods and the Conference of Religious of Ireland. So the CORI represented 18 religious orders which had run all these institutions for the last century, basically. And the deal that was signed at that time capped the bill for their abuse. So it was like, no matter what comes out, no matter how many lawsuits, how many people come forward, the max that you're going to have to pay is 128 million. And this was done through mostly exchange of assets to the state. So they're like, don't even pay cash, just hand us over some of the schools or buildings or land or whatever that you own. 128 max. So they're granted...
So what year again?
2002.
Okay,
but they're granted indemnity for any future litigation. So this was it. Couldn't be brought up again in this deal. All they had to do was pay the 128 mil. In the Dáil later on, Pat Rabbitte claimed that Bertie didn't comply with the cabinet procedures or properly consult with the Attorney General at the time on the issue. The deal had been completed after the government had been dissolved, but before the next one had been elected. So I've seen various reports as to when exactly it was, but it was in between the time when... So how things work here is you dissolve the government, there's an election, then you elect the new government. But this was done in between that period, so that it couldn't be debated in the Dáil.
You're making me start doubt Bertie.
And it was kept secret until the following January of 2003 when it was revealed in the media. So at that time, Michael Woods, who'd signed the deal, said that it was his strong Catholic faith that made him the most suitable person to negotiate the deal. When asked to give a statement about the exclusion of the Attorney General at the time, so they didn't bring in any legal advice from the government, Michael Woods said the legal people simply couldn't have attended. It was a no-go area for them. They'd fallen out with religions.
Why the fuck would the state care about religion? Why should the state care?
That's exactly the problem, Jason. They wouldn't care. They'd come in and they'd be like, oh, you should pay for all these children you abused. But Michael Woods, he was a man of faith. He knew there was...
What's he doing now?
He's probably got a cushy job in the Vatican somewhere. In 2006, Bertie doubled down on the decision. He said, it's sad what happened in those days. You argue that they shouldn't have been paid or should take the land off the church. It's not a road I go down. I make no apologies to the House or anyone else the way we did it. I do not for 1 second believe that we should have taken any more money from the religious institutions of the state. His argument was that many of the schools were under state supervision and the state had failed in its duty of care. The state was responsible. If it had gone to court and fought in court, the state would have been jointly liable and then, with deeper pockets, would have ended up paying the full bill. There's no way that the state has more money than the Catholic Church.
No.
That's not...
Especially if they're like, pay us back in assets. How about you just fucking... I don't even need to go to the basement of the Vatican what they talk about. You just need...
You don't want to go to the basement of the Vatican. You're not coming back.
Not again.
One more stretch, then this is done, right? But in 2009, they tried to renegotiate the deal. Bertie said there was no point re-examining the compensation deal as the church had no money. I remember when I did the deal, most of the church properties would be schools, churches, facilities that are totally unsaleable. Who would buy them? It would be the government. So what's the point? So his argument there is like, if you force them to sell these schools and hospitals, the only person that would buy them was the state. But if you force them to hand them over as part of the fact that they would need to pay compensation to these people that they abused, the state would own them rather than the organizations that did all the abuse.
Yep.
By 2009, the state had been given a bill of over 1 billion to deal with compensation, while the church had paid just 128 million. They made another voluntary deal in 2015, but as of when I was researching this, the latest I could see was from April last year. The church had paid 242 and the state had paid 1.5 billion. So they made this big show in 2015 to be like, we'll pay much more. They haven't done that. And this whole thing...
None of this is even surprising. That it's like, I am angry. Listening
back to the first two episodes, there was a lot of like being a bit soft to them. This episode really deals with the stuff that like...
That's reprehensible.
But it's again not stuff that he does himself, but he lets happen under his watch. And this in particular, he does go back and defend several times. Like that's 2 different occasions so it happens in 2002 under his watch. He's called upon it on 2006 and 2009 and 2015.
Like, how about right now, before he runs, if he does, if he does run for presidency, that every single press conference still has to be about the money, still has to be about this.
There's not enough space or time to go into this because it'd be a whole just Catholic Church episode. But there's so many stories because a lot of these are time sensitive. It's already been. So this is 2002. From 2023, they're still dragging their heels. These people they're not young. Like the people that were abused, they're getting older. There's another 20 years gone by. It's like, by and large, there were people that abuse had happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s. They're already old.
Well, a lot of the people have passed.
A lot of it is just waiting at the clock.
Yeah.
And like the most, a very cynical man would say that they are just waiting for these people to die so that they won't have to pay out money. And there's bollocks to say that they don't have any money. Even if like they can't tap the Vatican or the sort of worldwide organization to pay for what they've done,
but they
can sell. They can. Yeah, I'm sure they can. But even if they can't, they can sell the assets that they have.
A worldwide ring of paedophilia,
for sure.
That if they wanted to,
it's one of the richest organizations in the world.
So much easier than Epstein.
And we're not even talking about crazy money. Not to always harp back to the children's hospital, which they would have loved, but 1.5 billion the state has paid in the last 15 years to victims of abuse. That's nothing to the church as a worldwide organization.
But it means the taxpayers then have to fund the abuse that the state allowed.
And he has this weird point that it's like the Bertie will say that it was the state's fault for not monitoring the situation close enough because these are state organizations, which is fair. The state is some sort of like...
The state gave over the entire running of the nation to the church.
Yeah, but it's like...
You can't then turn around and be like, oh, we should have kept a closer eye on it. With what authority?
Yeah.
At what point, if they ever wanted to not... If you were... At any point in Ireland's history, have you ever stepped in and been like, hey, church, no, that's too far. But they also ran the country until we all just stopped caring about them. Oh, that's in recent times.
But the state should not be 10 times more responsible for not stepping in than the people who are doing the actual abuse.
Yeah.
But anyway, that is one of the things I squarely put at, this was a bad thing that he did. This is a thing that he had control over. It was his fault. He didn't act properly on it because of his religious beliefs. But I don't think that's any excuse.
There's no excuse. This isn't like the Apple money where you can just jingle some keys in front of my face and I'd be like, oh, maybe we do need future more business.
Sure.
I heard one smart lad, one lad with a South Dublin accent who runs a podcast who, oh my God, and Johnny came in today. So, what did you bring? You brought the new Frappuccino from God Shandy's. Oh. Now, let me tell you why we should pay billions to make sure Apple are still a very, very rich company.
But there's
none of that here. It's not we're like, we have to wait for the church to invest more money.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. They're not creating more jobs. They don't invest money. It's just they siphon everything out and then rape children.
Absolutely. Like it's insane. It could not be more black and white to be like the organization that facilitated the sexual, emotional and physical abuse of children for decades.
Is there anything to be said for putting a pin in this because there's going to be more fun parts of the Bertie saga?
Yeah.
And there's no coming back from this.
No, there's not.
This is like whenever Walt turns bad in Breaking Bad. You're just like, it was, no, he's only doing it for, and how could you, in this sort of, and then he just kills someone.
And there's also...
Like, well, she's going to fuck my life up, or maybe she will, so I'll just murder her.
Let's sign a deal
about the
that
last
absolves,
century of abuse. Let's not put it through when the government's dissolved, when you could have done it at any point, and you could do it at any point, and it's just that there's no... From this point onwards, he's just a horrible cunt.
Yeah.
That, in my opinion, if that's
For sure.
Well, I don't know the legal terms. What I'm about to say.
I think that's probably fine. Yeah. Well, all right. Let's put a pin in that.
Raging bastard. I don't know what's.
What about this? Back in 1999, Bertie Ahern had floated an idea for a dream, a plan for Stadium Ireland. AKA
you got me back on board.
The Bertie Bowl. All right. He wanted to build a stadium in Abbottstown. It was this giant sort of sports complex with a football stadium. And it was part of Ireland's bid to host the 2008 Euros alongside Scotland. So it was supposed to be, I'd seen varying reports, I think it was either 65 or 75,000 seater stadium in Abbottstown. The Bertie Bowl, apparently coined by Pat Rabbit. but it was estimated to cost somewhere in the range of 280 million to over $1 billion.
It's a big range.
Yeah, I think
Who's
a lot.
building that?
Well, Bam, yeah.
Bam, bam.
We'll do a Bam episode. Wham, bam, your money's gone. But Jim McDade, Minister for Sports at the time, do you know him?
Not sure.
Yeah, he'll come up later on. Interesting fella. But he believed in the Bertie Bowl. So part of the money that they spent, so the estimate of 280 to 1 billion, they spent 43 million trying to get it going. So a lot of that would have been spent on them estimating wrongly what it would have cost in the end.
Yeah, and there was a lot of lobbying as well, because at the same time they were trying to build another national stadium. They had 2 sites at the time that they were trying to build, because they were like, and then, do you have more of this, or I just run through it?
Well, no, pretty much that, eventually gets scrapped in September 2002. On his last day in the Dáil in January 2011, Ahern, some RTE reporter asked Ahern if he had any regrets. He said, "I still think we didn't get a proper national infrastructure stadium. It's an achievement I tried hard to do, but didn't get."
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you know what? The church, they shouldn't have to pay for those children they abused. In April 2020, Bertie said Bertie Bowl could still be built if someone had political guts.
If you hadn't have paid £1 billion to
That's why he's a dreamer. That's why he should be our next president. Never say never attitude. He's coming back in 2020. He's like, yeah, I could have got Roy Keane to play for Ireland. Yeah, we should have built the Bertie Bowl. This country needs a little less cowards and a little more me.
A lot of lads saying, how are we going to afford £1 billion for a stadium? Well, I afforded £1.5 billion.
Yeah. What did you got to say about the Bertie Bowl?
But it's because they were like, as far as I'm aware, that there was the one in Abbottstown.
Yeah.
And there was their talks at the time that there were, Bertie said he didn't want it, but that there was going to be a casino out there as well as part of the complex.
Bad gambling has no place in sports.
He said there's no place for
but
that.
a sure thing. That's not a gamble.
But maybe he wouldn't have also been against it if it did happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I think that whatever had happened at the time, he basically gave up the Bertie Bowl as a way to curry favour for the next election or something that was coming up.
Yeah.
That it was like, right, this isn't the hill to die on, that I can't. And then whatever happened with the other one, that they were like, it doesn't make sense. Firstly, it makes no sense for Dublin to have Croke Park, the Aviva. Like I say, at the time, Lanzarote
it didn't have the Aviva,
even though it was falling down. So what happened was the other 2 bids were fighting against each other so much that it collapsed, and they just, all of that money was wasted, and they built the Aviva.
Yeah.
Which again doesn't make any sense to have Croke Park.
Yeah.
And the Aviva. And just multiple stadiums littered around. Yeah. And also that's for every, like, Galway they're on about redeveloping, like, Pearse Stadium. They've already, they already have it, or redeveloping the showgrounds, and they want a new, like, big stadium, like a proper all-seated stadium for Galway United. Like, you can all just use 2 stadiums between 3 to 4 sports is plenty. Páirc Uí Chaoimh, Turner's Cross, you go through all the Cork ones, you go through Belfast. We'll get into Casement Park another time.
Yeah, but well, there's an idea that so he might have given up about the Bertie Bowl. The Bertie Bowl is a real passion project. He loves sports. Apparently, there had been some idea for something quite similar in Clondalkin a little bit before this that he shut down and then pushed his own idea. Which is a lot of people says the exact same idea but with his name on it. But anyway, so part of the reason why maybe he gave up on it at this point that you were kind of alluding to is that his popularity starts to dip for the first time. He's not used to this. Bertie likes being liked, and he has had a very good run of it for the last while. So they get elected in May again. They run on, as we were saying in the last episode, Charlie McCreevy, the hero of these times, pumps a shit ton of money into the government. Almost immediately they have to roll back on it. Going into 2002, the economy globally is in a bit of a downturn. The first tech bubble bursts. It's, even at this period, you're only like 6 to 9 months after 9/11. That affects the Western economy. So almost immediately they have to roll back on all these things they promised leading up to the election, which is exactly what Charlie McCreevy would have wanted anyway. The idea of pumping money into government
Why would the government
bodies.
need money?
Why would the government need money?
When you could just not tax rich people.
Yeah. That should be given to private businesses. But I think I haven't seen much written about this because everyone's like says people start giving out to McCreevy for rolling back in these promises, or giving out to Bertie, but I'm sure McCreevy is delighted not to actually have to do this. But heading into their first budget as a new government in 2002, they get a lot of abuse in the media and a lot of abuse from people because they feel like they've been lied to. Now, times are still relatively good in Ireland, especially compared to like the early 90s, the 80s. But people feel like McCreevy lied to them, but more so that Bertie lied to them. And they don't like that. In October of that year, we went back to vote on the Nice Treaty again. Do you remember that? Nice Part 2?
Yeah.
I'm going to do a separate episode about the Nice and Lisbon treaties because, much like the referendum that's happening in 3 days, people don't really understand what's happening and they're annoyed and scared and angry.
If we get this one wrong, can we vote for it again?
Well, yeah, so this gets done twice. We're the only, so again, we'll cover this in a separate episode, but due to a court case in the 80s, I think, we are the only country in the EU at the time that needs to ratify any of these sort of agreements by a referendum. So we have to go to a vote to change the constitution to allow us to ratify this thing because it involves something to do with a shared, the idea maybe of a European army or something like that, shared military things. So we go back and we're the only one that vote against it, and we go back and do it again in 2001. It's the same with the Lisbon Treaty. We're made to do it twice. And my memory at the time was that people were scared that it was going to give over too much power to the EU. Sort of like, imagine a fantasy scenario like we ran out of money and we had to sell ourselves to Germany. But people were scared that would give too much of our autonomy, hard-fought autonomy, over to like a scary, nebulous quango of the EU. Who even knows what's happening over there? Who was even in charge of the EU at the time? And it turns out it was a man called Bertie Ahern. I can't trust a man like that. I'd never realized that, but like
how could you be Taoiseach and
in 2004 he becomes president of the EU.
When Kevin says president of the EU, he meant president of the EU Council.
Just then you couldn't know what he's up over there.
Yeah. But that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves anyway. This is we passed the Nice Treaty Part 2. So this is another thing that I think can definitely, this is the thing that happened under Bertie's watch that he can be blamed for. And is one of the worst things he's done that affected the country. So, heading into...
I just want to see him talk to the heads of state all around the Europe and just be like...
He did that with Hector. He brought Hector with him to talk to Chirac while he was leading up to being the EU president.
I want to be a fly on the wall when he's doing it because he's using the same tactics that he would have used in Ireland and just walking around as the Switzerland Prime Minister. He's like, Jesus, the skiing. Did you see the skiing today?
Crazy. Do you know what they always
Finland,
say?
Robert. Oh, no, I thought that was bobsleighs for
Robert Slade. I knew a fella called, he was a great man for the pints. Switzerland, I tell you this, the flag is a big plus. Oh, there he is. You, the Bert. December 2002. So,
fucking thunderstorm of personality. Just come from the land of pints and blow.
Woo! Oh, he's 2002. It's happening again. Hello and welcome to a pitch for some live shows that we have coming up.
Belfast.
Oh yeah.
Belfast.
Yes.
Belfast.
That is the first one, yes. But we've also got Dublin, Cork, Galway, Limerick, Dundalk, and then Dublin again.
Belfast.
And also Belfast. That is happening soon, the 21st of March. The rest of them, the dates, if you look in the description of this episode, they're all written there. There's links to buy all the tickets. Why not come out and see us, your favorite podcast hosts, doing stories live for your benefit?
April and May, the 2 months right before the good months come in.
Exactly.
It's your last chance to have a memory of... Do you remember what it was like to be indoors having fun before the definitely guaranteeable put your whole house on it warm Irish summer between June and September?
100%. You're not even going to darken the doorstep of a pub between June and September. May as well come in, spend the last couple of days indoors with us, your favourite boys. So, that's once again Belfast.
Belfast.
Dublin, Cork, Galway, Limerick, Dundalk. If these places sound familiar to you, get the hell in there and buy some tickets, and we'll see you for a live show. So, the old way of getting planning permission in Ireland, back in the old country, was to bribe Ray Burke. That's how you got things done. But heading into the 21st century, that's a bad... It turns out Ray Burke was a bad egg, the only rotten apple in the government, and they needed to come up with a new sort of planning permission act. So they come up with the Planning Development Act of 2000. And in it is written a fairly progressive, fairly interesting idea. It's referred to as Section Part V. It's a subclause of this Planning Act, which requires developers to provide 15 to 20% social or affordable housing in all developments. So if you want to build a housing development in Ireland, you have to sell 15 to 20% of it at cost to the government. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that other plans that have gone before in the 20th century, where there's areas like Ballymun or these sort of purpose-built social housing developments, which then didn't work out in the long run because they become isolated and segregated. The idea was that in all estates, there would be 15 to 20% given over social housing. It promotes integration. It lets the government have a good stock of social housing for people. It would take the sting out of maybe the biggest housing crisis the country has ever seen. It's a good idea.
Here comes the but.
But in December of 2002, and this is kind of echoing it's not as bad as the last one where they're just in under the wire during an interim government. But in 2002, in December, coming into the close of the year, there's an amendment put to Part V, which means that now instead of selling the houses at cost to the state, the developers can just pay the state not to do it. Or lump the houses that they're going to give to the state together in separate estates, which completely defeats the whole idea of it being a unsegregated social housing estate.
So they're going to create a social housing estate then?
Yeah. Or what they opted to do in general was just pay out of it.
Yeah.
So they don't have to do it. So this is a really interesting idea that they had, which lasted for 2 years. The developers had lobbied the bill had gone to the High Court. They'd said it was unconstitutional, so they'd fought that in like 2001, and then that failed. So then they lobbied to the government to put in this new amendment to it, which passed in Christmas of 2002, which some would say is, just at the end of the year when they're trying to like slip stuff in. But since 2002, Part V has provided more than 19,000 social houses, as its sort of benefactors would say. But that is fuck all, really, considering it's been 20 years.
Yeah. When
it could have been 15 to 20% of every apartment block. Here, I think where we live, there is like...
That actually is a thing.
That is, yeah. And what it does is it creates a lot of the issues of making...
A lot of tension.
No, like a lot of issues of making these social housing areas that they become people... There's like a stigma to living there or whatever. And like, if you see that estate on a job application, people will maybe discriminate against you. And it creates a stigma of being from certain areas this sort of way. But making it a part of every estate...
Yeah, just like it's normal.
It's normal. It means you don't know who... everyone's living together.
If you were to look at our apartment complex,
yeah,
we look like the social housing people.
That exactly.
It's like
hey guys,
two lads walking around in sweatpants, smoking
at all hours,
at all hours of the day,
with their chasing their cat around.
They leave at like 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
It's at 1 or 2 a.m.
Sure,
drunk
right.
as shit.
Yeah.
When was the last time they did a day's work?
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Two good lads doing a good day's work.
I'd say those boys know how to use a shovel, but you're right, and that's
it's us.
Yeah, it creates communities, and it doesn't isolate or segregate people. And it was honestly, I was trying to figure out who pitched the idea or where the idea came from. There's a lot of stuff written about it. Not as much as I think there should be, but it's an interesting idea that lasted for 2 years after, again, these developers trying to get it kicked out for being unconstitutional in the high courts, and then lobbying to get this amendment put into it, where they just basically, it doesn't exist really. And 19,000 houses, this is probably one of the 3 big things, along with the church, and one we'll talk about in a bit, that I would really blame Bertie for. Like, this happened under his watch. And if this had have been allowed to go ahead as it had been planned at the time,
it would have been like...
We wouldn't be as fucked as we are now.
No, it would 15 to 20%. That's the amount of people who can't afford, like...
No.
Yeah. It would solve most of the issues that the country would currently have had.
Yeah. Now, I mean, like the argument...
And also, not 100%, because it's the same deal of like that I wouldn't have been able to get one of those social houses.
But...
Like, I'm not from Dublin, so I can't get that. So I would have been able to get, say, maybe one in Carlow. But I don't want to live there. I want to live in a city where I can work and do the things I want to do.
Yeah, but
it is just a part of the problem that people from the country have with this. That they're like, you're from Dublin. you don't have to live in Dublin.
But also affordable houses. It's not all social. It's just that
affordable houses is the main thing. That's but even still, that
it keeps the stock of it. Well, also like the reason
it's become an issue that even turns like the people in the nation against each other because they get annoyed about the fact that some people get social housing and they don't deserve it. Now you do, and all of this, and you're like, that wouldn't have been an issue. That there's like a class divide between the different stratas of the lower to lower middle class, and everyone is just backbiting each other.
But imagine if
65% of the economy.
Imagine if every house or housing estate built from the year 2000, so 24 years ago, including in 2005, I think they hit a peak where there was 100,000 houses built that year. So like we're in the peak years of people pumping out houses. If 15 to 20% of those were just either available for anyone on a waiting list that needed a house or available to be bought at cost, it would be a different place that we're living in now. And again, this is
full of the Irish people that have left.
Sure. I mean, maybe, and so to play devil's advocate, the people who detract against this say that it takes away onus on councils to provide social housing and just puts more emphasis on private business. But, and I guess I could be called hypocritical for in the last episodes being like, it's fucking private business or dogs and we should be able to run the place. It's how when it comes to building the houses, let them do it.
Yeah, no,
I would say the government should also be building houses, but that ain't happening. So this seems a good workaround.
Well, realistically, it's that a case of all of these things should work in tandem. And that if you just don't pass a law that just makes it that you have to do it this way, that at some point naturally we would be like,
if we were also funding our own internal like state built houses like they used to do, and we had builders employed and on like good wages to build houses, a lot of these things like, oh, there's no silver bullet solution. So but if you did 2 or 3 things, you don't have to do just one thing. And if that doesn't work 100%, don't do anything.
There's no silver bullet, but you could stop beating lads over the head with fucking shillelaghs.
I do.
That you just to cut the knees off of generations of people to the idea now that like a house for someone of our generation is £500,000 and werewolves.
In February 2003, here we go, rounding into year 2. 5 protesters broke into Shannon Airport and destroyed a warplane with some hammers and a pickaxe.
I thought it was the one man.
No, that guy, so Kieran O'Reilly is the name that you hear or that we talked about before. But there's 5 of them. They make up a group known as the Pit Stop Plowshares. They're a group of Catholic workers. I don't know why.
That's great.
The Pit Stop Plowshares?
Yeah. I thought you were going to be like, it's going to to be like the Birmingham 6. Oh, it's going to be wherever they're from and a number. But no. It's a group of, 5, Kieran O'Reilly, Deirdre Clancy, Karen Ballon, Newan Dunlop, and Damien Warren. And they break into Shannon, run past some security guards who are very annoyed. But they destroy these planes with hammers and pickaxes and then basically surrendered themselves. So this is the irony of like the big argument over the Nice Treaty being passed the second time is that we want a clause to assure Irish neutrality. At the same time, they're letting warplanes refuel and fly through Shannon. So in 2001, Bertie told the US Secretary of State that normal conditions for overflight and landing of the US military would be waived by Ireland. So this is, a month after 9/11, Bertie goes and says, don't worry about it. All the things, the conventions, the anti-terrorist stuff, don't worry about that. That means the US troops are permitted to transit through Shannon on the way to Afghanistan, which starts off protests. The protests started in like December 2001, so pretty soon afterwards. But as the years go on, this goes into, fueling for the Iraq War, and people aren't happy about this. This whole idea of like Irish neutrality, and yet in one of the most contentious wars of our time, we're letting planes stock and refuel on the way over there. In 2006, but is like just devil's advocate, we've never really been neutral, and we've
that's
long
true.
History. Like World War II, we're still like that's
But I mean,
it is basically the same thing. I know, not at all. But I'm just saying, like the idea of like flubbing the lines about what we're saying we're doing and what we actually do.
Yeah.
by letting people like military operations come into the country to refuel.
We like flubbing the lines when it's against the Nazis, it turns out.
Yes.
I mean, not at the time so much, but after, I think people were annoyed about the Middle East wars at the time.
They should be, yeah.
Yeah, but in 2006, the Pits, what do we call it?
But it's just me like, can you believe what they've done?
No,
again?
I know. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's like, well, it turns out they've done the same thing they've done every time there's ever been a conflict where we might be used as a place to stop off and refuel.
At some point, like I haven't got to go here, but at some point they were like, no, they're not stopping off here to refuel planes. And the protesters were like, we can see them. Here's a load of photographs we took of them. It was like, well, actually, they've been doing that for 50 years. And apparently it has. It was like, well, they've always been there. And it's actually kind of weird of you to get annoyed about it now.
Shame on you for not noticing before.
Oh, what, did you not care about Vietnam? Because guess where they were stopping off on the way. But so in 2006, the pit stop plowshares were all acquitted after the jury accepted the defence that they were basically trying to prevent murder abroad.
Were some lads.
You know what? The jury finds you some fucking boys.
A pickaxe.
Oh, fair play to you.
Let me ask you a question.
Where do you
go for a pint?
Where do you get the fucking balls? But
a hammer and a pickaxe.
Which is, so apparently they had like PDF or like books that they were sending around each other, so they knew
where to go.
They could knock off certain bits that would basically mean that the plane would have to be rebuilt. A couple of million euro worth of damage done in a few minutes with hammers and pickaxes. But so they were acquitted because they
acupuncture for.
Well, they argued that they were saving people's lives by stopping them flying over to the Middle East.
Yeah.
But didn't really slow them down. In 2005 at its peak, there was 6,500 US troops a week flying through with their weapons, although they promised that they were just personal use weapons. They weren't using them to fight wars in Iraq.
Wait, what?
That was part of the deal, that because the whole way it's this flubbing of the lines. They're like, well, they might be refueling here, but they're not transporting weapons to the Middle East. And then it turns out they had some weapons. And they're like, well, they're carrying their own guns. They're just their own personal.
There's definitely no way you're allowed. I don't know. I'm taking all of this.
No, it's all. It's so well. Also, in 2003, in January 2003, so the month before that plane attack, the CIA plane N379P, better known by its affectionate nickname, the Guantanamo Express, was seen refueling in Shannon. And by 2006,
the
according
Guantanamo
to
layover,
stay for the scenic Clare Cliffs, and you know what? That's the last bit of scenery you're going to be seeing for quite a while. But an independent EU watchdog in 2006 said that it had tracked at least 147 separate CIA flights landing and refueling in Shannon on the way to and from the Middle East, which were almost definitely carrying peoples to be brought to black sites to be tortured. And all the while we were like,
dingle.
They're just do you like fungi? Anyway, that also happened under his watch.
Yeah, that's a. Yeah, to be honest, I'm not happy about it, but it's one of those you're like, that's just going to happen.
Yeah, that one is less. The church.
It's until someone bombs us for doing that, we're just going to keep doing it.
Yeah, there's a clip of it at the end where, in terms of things I would put like at his feet that he should have stopped or should have stepped in for, or that I disagree with him personally. This is like, yeah, I'm not going to say what are you going to do, because he could have resigned, but it would have been a sort of moral. Even that attack on the plane, people pointed out, it's like all that really did was cost the Exchequer $4 million because we had to repay the plane. It's not like it stopped anything happening, but it is a symbolic thing, and like the stand idly by and let that happen, or certainly but then I feel like you're getting very finicky about like, well, it's okay to let troops land and refuel as long as they're not holding weapons, apart from the weapons that they definitely have. We'll ignore that. Yeah. But it's bad form. It's okay for them to torture people on the way here and on the way out of here, but don't you dare torture anyone on our Shannon airport while you're in our land. Like, what difference does it make? You're still sort of complacent.
Well, no, it's even just the idea of like it's not even about like doing that. The fact that they have that, and they have basically a camp of torture.
Yeah.
That if another nation had that, like I know England doesn't have a.
It was going the other way. If they were like bringing American troops over to Saudi Arabia to torture, bad example. If they were bringing, but and so there is a clip I will play at the end where Bertie talks about this, and he does seem very dejected.
Yeah,
which it's not absolving him of what he did, but and I mean your hands are probably tied.
Yeah,
much like those people on the planes.
I know it's the whole. You could say, sure, what would we be losing other than a very close bond we've had with a giant superpower?
Literally the only thing keeping our economy from sinking into.
Like, it is.
Remember Iceland? Yeah.
What? Who?
Exactly. But anyway, in 2003. Let's get back to the good old gossipy times. The story leaks that he'd broken up with Cecilia Larkin. So the media kind of twigged that he'd broken up with her after she failed to co-host a diplomatic dinner for the visiting German Bundespräsident. Don't know. But her name is featured on the invitations. Press shows up. She's not there. News leaked that he'd broken up with her. It turns out later on that the news had leaked from his own office. He put it out there. But one of the things I left out of the last episode, which is kind of interesting that he'd done, in the whole, like, you know, anti-divorce, not being separated from his wife, they have a ceremonial dinner in 2001 for the new Cardinal Desmond O'Connell. He's the Archbishop of Dublin. And on the invitation, he puts Cecilia's name. So it's hosted by Bertie Ahern and Cecilia Larkin. And the Cardinal freaks out because it's being hosted by an unmarried couple, which is, I think they leave her name off his specific invitation. But the invitations to everybody else to the event celebrating him being the Cardinal, they have her name on it. Which is not nothing. It's not a whole lot, but it's something.
It's something. Considering what did...
Considering all the other shit that he just... All the water he carried for the Catholic Church. It's like, it's whatever.
Or like even when he wanted to be divorced himself and he voted against it.
Now...
That, like, in fairness, if you were to... The fact he does have past in siding with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, he is a very Catholic man.
Even against his own, like, wishes, I guess.
Yeah. Well, do you want more gossip?
Oh, go on, yeah.
Oh, God. In August 2003, Georgina Ahern, his daughter, gets married.
Nicky's... Do you mean League of Ireland and former... Was it Celtic?
Was he?
Nicky Byrne.
Nicky Byrne.
Nicky Byrne played for Rovers because he was let go. But no, it was Leeds. He played in... It was like the Leeds.
For Leeds.
He was like Gary White Leeds.
Yeah.
White, super whites. He was... he played in goal for Leeds, not for the senior team, for the the academy. He was never going to get into the city. He's a bit small anyway. But they were like in the... I think at the same time, they were in the Champions League semi-final. He was the underage keeper for it, under 21s.
Okay.
Like maybe around the squad. Then he went into a better career.
Yeah.
They say he's very good in the radio. He works the desk himself, which I heard years ago, and I was like, that is actually, that does impress me a lot.
Oh, yeah. That does impress you much.
Instead of going in and just being like I'm just the face of it and I have other people, he learned how to use the control desk and all of that. That's for a millionaire to do that.
That's true. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Well, so they got married. I just written down 23 and 24. So either or, they're both in their early 20s. It's Nicky Byrne's Westlife. At the time, probably a millionaire
it's Brian
at the time.
McFadden's Westlife. You fucking take that back.
But yeah, massive musician, celebrity in his own right, very wealthy, getting married
Brian
to...
McFadden was class. Kerry Katona, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were there at the wedding. They got married the year before. The two of them were at this wedding.
Were they already split up by now then?
No. Well, don't darken the day. Yeah, they're there. Ronan Keaton also went to sing a song at the wedding. So they get married in the French village of Gallardon, followed by a reception at the nearby Chateau de Esclemont. I nailed both those pronunciations.
How did his constituency feel about
I tell you this. So bitter.
Oh yeah,
it's so.
He's been talking about that. Should have been in Fagan's. That should have been.
Right. So there's where was so
we're splitting it up over every pub in Drumcondra. We're doing the 12 pubs of Bertie's daughter getting married.
I watched a lot of stuff about this, including from our old Shout Talk alum Fintan O'Toole, who said that they were humiliating the state. So I'll say what happened first, and then we'll talk into the reaction. It's in this small little French village in France, funnily enough, but they sell the rights, exclusive rights to filming and photography and journalism and all that stuff to Hello Magazine, who are kind of check out a Tesco celeb mag.
Were they an Irish celeb mag, or do they just have an Irish branch of the...
They'd been I'd read that they were sold to Spain at the time, but I think initially it might have been, it was UK or Irish. It was the local-ish, but they, like many of our institutions, had been sold for parts. But I think a lot of the annoyance from mainstream media was because of this.
Yeah.
So there's footage in RT where the bride and groom arrive in a Jeep, but they have to drive into a tent, so you can't even get photos of them. And everything's done behind barriers. So now they sold the rights for reportedly about 800 to 850,000. Mm-hmm. And by God, were the press annoyed. Yeah, Fintan O'Toole says this is humiliating the state. There's comparisons made to like, what if the French Premier Jacques Chirac's daughter had gotten married in some town in Ireland and we weren't even allowed to stick our faces through the gates and gawk at them? How would that be received? And there's all this
but
stuff.
It's not that though. It would be like if Chirac's daughter got married over here and the French weren't allowed to come and...
But it's like,
you wouldn't complain if someone else did it in your country. I guarantee you the people people in Drumcondra, probably pretty pissed. Some little bits around the country, maybe a little annoyed.
Sure.
That's the press.
It's the press.
Just people from Drumcondra.
It's the press because I read all these different reports and all these
because
different
of the
articles.
filthy lies they'd been talking about him for years.
But they're like, because they all went over there and they give a rundown at the wedding, which none of them were allowed into. So it's all second. It's all like, a source that was there or such and such was there. And it's all the same. It's the same as what happens at every wedding. They're like, the food's too late. The day went on. The speeches were too long. It was very hot. But they're all just like, and you should have seen what Miriam was wearing. Mutton dressed as lamb, Jason.
I tell you, the
phrase mutton dressed as lamb shows up in multiple different reports. And I heard the dinner wasn't even served till 10 o'clock. And it's all because he wouldn't he wouldn't talk to the press during his daughter's wedding.
Father of the bride was saying some salacious things during the speech.
And it's all because they sold it to Hello. And they're like, the gossip magazine gets to talk to you, and they play up the fact that like, from what I saw of the footage, when the Jeep drives into the tent, the people in the town are like, boo. But in the same way that like, not like mean-spirited, but just kind of like, we can't see what's happening. That is reported in every article, and every newspaper is like, and the locals booed and spat on them for disrespecting the town of Giordon, which we'd all heard of before yesterday. And there's so much anger. So there's a quote from Elise O'Hanlon saying that, short of persuading Nicky Byrne to hold the ceremony in a wet field in Connemara with Joe Dolan and Dana providing a doleful cabaret, followed by a honeymoon at a B&B in Bundoran, Bertie couldn't have won. And that, I don't know who she is, I don't know what allegiances are, but by God, that was definitely the vibe I was picking up. Also sounds like a great wedding.
Also just, there are certain Irish town names that are very funny.
Yeah, Bundoran.
Just to throw it in at the Bundoran.
Yeah. But an
Airbnb in Bundoran.
Yeah.
That's fucking great.
And Ireland in 2003 is much more parochial than it is now. And there is a sense of like, Cabra Castle was good enough for Sting, not good enough for Bertie Ahern's daughter.
How could you get no? That's why most people who are famous in Ireland don't get married in Ireland.
Well, I don't think I have it in this. But
where would they have done it? Where could they have done it where it wouldn't have been a fucking nightmare?
He is a celebrity. He's got managers. He's in Westlife. Also, it's not Bertie's decision. It's his fucking daughter's big day. It has nothing to do with him. He should be allowed not be pestered by journalists on his daughter's wedding day. The mafia can do it. What can't he do? Well, I don't want to make that comparison. Which, did you notice in the Hector hanging with Hector thing? Hector walks into his house. He's like, Tony Soprano. We don't want to draw that comparison too heavily. But on the day of his daughter's wedding, give the man a fucking break.
Yeah.
Like it is like the amount of jealousy and annoyance from mainstream or like the media in Ireland at the time, and it seems to be because they sold the rights to Hello,
which is pretty funny. It is pretty funny because he got a load of money for it.
Yeah, I think there seem to be implications that like somehow we were paying for it, but that's not. No. He didn't answer your stupid fucking questions.
People who bought Hello magazine were paying for it.
When you were trying to like stick your head through a gate and be like, "Who's your dress by? Why isn't it pennies? Why aren't you wearing pennies?" Anyway, but this is he's having his negative spin in the press, exemplified by this is from the the Irish Times Politics podcast I've listened to for this. They talk about the Ireland held the Special Olympics in 2003. Apparently Bertie was booed at that during the opening ceremony. Ooh. And now this is what they say, which I have read this verified that this happened, but they link it together that because of being booed in the opening ceremony, in the closing ceremony, someone flies a plane over the stadium with a banner floating behind it saying, "Thanks, Bertie." Now, maybe that was a man's damaged ego. someone annoyed.
It's not that expensive to hire a plane to do those messages.
No, but it's sort of sad to be.
It's sort of sad.
Yeah.
Or hilarious.
You know, it's sort of sad to be booed at. You're trying to put on the Special Olympics, and people are annoyed at you. Yeah. But now, again, the critique of him is that, like, he's opening the ceremony of the Special Olympics. Yeah, actively, him, McCreevy are defunding actual, people, actual services that are helping people with disabilities at the time. But maybe he paid for a plane to fly over the stadium afterwards to be like, yeah, you're fucking welcome. Yeah. You're fucking welcome.
Or...
yeah. Someone else did it.
Someone else did it to make people think that he'd be that petty.
I think he is.
No, I don't know how many people would.
He had
that dude who in Austin who paid for the plane. I think it was during like an UT football game, so like over 100,000 people, or whatever. But a plane just drove by over the stadium. It just said Joe Rogan's 5'3". That was.
Now that's worth every penny.
That's on every penny.
That's great. But I don't know. I mean, I think Bertie likes to be liked, and this is his period of not being liked. Mm-hmm. They're annoyed at the wedding thing. I think mostly it stems from...
Now I'm trying to think of... Because it's Bertie.
Budget thing.
And the only other time I can think of a plane flying over a stadium and a message been on it was when Manchester United, when they sacked their manager, David Moyes.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was a little bit before they sacked him, but it was going really bad. And during like a home game, someone flew a plane across Old Trafford that just said Moyes out.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking, was it Bertie?
Was it Bertie? Was Bertie flying the plane? On that fateful day. Well...
And then the next one just afterwards said, thanks, Bertie.
No. You're in the wrong stadium.
I'd already paid for it, so I thought.
Just flip the banner over. Well... Listen, we've talked a lot about the negatives of his first couple of years in term. What about the positives? March 2004, Ireland rocks the world by being the first European country to introduce a smoking ban in the workplace. And by God, was it poorly received. It's very funny watching footage from this time.
The workplace. I never even thought about that.
That's why it was in the pubs. So sorry, the headline is that it's banned from pubs, but it's because it's a workplace.
Yeah.
But, Jackie Healy-Rae? What does that man got to say? It's very funny to watch footage from these people. Just like these
are old rural farmers. They don't have a way. This is their only way to socialise. If they want to smoke 50 cigarettes in the pub, if they want to burn the pub down 4 times a week,
yeah, you're literally hitting every note. Like I think it's Brian Dobson. And it's him in a car, and Jackie Healy is just like driving along into rural car. He drives to Pat Spillane pub. Mm-hmm. Give him a shout out, and he's like, these pubs are shut. Basically, he's doing a 2-prong approach of like, these pubs are shut down if you stop it, and also, who the fuck's going to enforce it? He's like driving way into rural car. He's like, do you even know where you are? Yeah, the guards don't either. So good luck. And it is funny. They're just talking to people in the pub, and there's some woman she's just standing beside 2 smokers who are just chain smoking inside, and she's like, it doesn't even affect me. I don't even mind. I don't smoke myself. It does no damage to me. It's like, that is at this point, and you know that's not right. You know that's not true. You're 37. But there's a lot of interviews with publicans being like, what are we going to do?
There's a walker just hopping out of the pub. Good luck. I have to get an early night. The leaving starts tomorrow.
There's a lot of people being like, if they ban smoking in pubs, I'm going to stop drinking. I wonder how long it was before they were back in drinking again. I'd say probably a half an hour.
2 days, maybe.
But in fairness, I'd say the ban wasn't enforced in a lot. There's still places now you can go to, it's not enforced. But like, by and large, it was very successful.
When I'd heard about that boycott story of Chignoctons in Galway,
until the sun came out.
It's like the man's Richie Ryan. That's what he called. If you're a tight bastard in Galway, if anyone from Galway tells us it's true.
No.
That if you're
also go to a gig.
Yeah, also go to a gig. 7. It's in 7 Bridge Street. Yeah. But
that's how much a pint costs.
We'll find out. Hopefully ours are free. But if you're tight in Galway, they call you Richie Ryan because he was the publican, the owner of Chignoctons.
Yeah.
And years ago, he at some point he doubled the price of a pint, or raised it by over £1 or something. That was just not the regular amount, and everyone swore blind were boycotting it. and that lasted for like about a week. And then they said, until a particularly sunny day.
Yeah.
And you're just... The idea of, I'll break the boycott that I've swore now to go on a kind of a sunny day, to go inside
into a pub.
a dark pub to drink
when there's many
warm
other
Guinness.
pubs around that have like
But especially
outdoor areas
to drink Guinness instead of drink lager, drink cider. Go.
Bulmer's paid a lot of money to associate themselves with the sunshine so that they can do good sales that 1 week of the summer. But yeah, much like, people say a lot of things in these situations. Jackie Healy-Rae said that he'd sooner go to jail than bring in the ban. I don't know what happened there.
How did that even?
Yeah, 2 days into the ban, Fine Gael's justice spokesperson, John Deasy, flouted the law by going smoking in the Dáil bar. He was fired.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why I find this so funny, but the anti-smoking group...
Cheapest pints and most expensive cigarettes in the country.
But the anti-smoking group ASH hailed it as the health initiative of the century, while the Irish Cigarette Machine Operators Association described it as their darkest day.
Wait, hold on a second. The acronym is ASH.
Yeah. The anti-smoker group.
What's the H stand for?
I don't know. ASH, anti-smoking health. ASH is like a funny acronym for them. But just the idea that the Irish Cigarette Machine Operators Association, which the IMCOA, they said it was their darkest day. Oh, it's a dark, dark day for the cigarette salesmen of this country.
Just turn around and be like, it's all over, John.
We had a good run.
Looks like we're going to have to reskill. Come on, let's get on to the smack.
They're just about to turn off the lights and shut the place down. It's like, wait a minute, a vape?
What's your name? Kidnahan?
I had a lot of fun watching all the videos and stuff from that period where just like people are so vehemently against it. It's like, you will be proved very wrong very quickly. But anyway, it's not a good time to have brought that in. So that's March 2004. In June, it's the EU election time and local elections. They're having local election and EU elections at the same time. This is when he does the hanging with Hector kind of, what would you call it? Promotional.
I'd call it a steadfast, honest to goodness journalistic.
No holds barred, take no prisoners, hard hitting journalism. But they do all that as a promo leading up to this election. Because this is where you get, he's at a shock and a rag. And he's visibly uncomfortable this whole way through it. And he's in a negative downturn for his personal popularity. People don't like him. People are booing him at events. People are making fun of him in the news. And this is reflected in the local and EU elections. It's the worst result for Fianna Fáil in 80 years. They do very badly. This supposedly starts the move for Bertie to push Charlie McCreevy out. A lot of this he's tying back to, I don't know how true this is. This might just be comparisons I've seen people make. A lot of this he's pinning on McCreevy for the... People are annoyed at the lead up to the 2002 elections that they promised no cutbacks. A couple of months later, they turned that back. People are annoyed about that. But this probably starts him pushing out Charlie McCreevy. So he... There's different reports as to what happened, but basically McCreevy leaves and he heads to Brussels for some big job. And he says, thanks for all the good times, and heads off. And everyone's like, very sad to see him go. And they replace him with a young man called Brian Cowan. And Cowan goes in, and this seems like something from a cult. But basically, he during his first speech as Minister for Finance, he gets like a standing ovation before he even says anything. And it's this weird kind of political double speak where he's like, I love McCreevy, the GOAT, #1, best finance minister ever. But as finance minister, I will be delivering a document from the whole government, not some lone cowboy gunslinger. And then simultaneously, and it's true, like the stuff we talked about in the first episode, there is this real, even in that clip from Hanging with Hector, when he's going into the budget meeting, Hector's like, what are you up to? And they're just like, well, now we're basically listening to Charlie McCreevy talk for 2 hours. There's this whole, he's just running everything. And due to this bad election, they're like, right, that's the end of that. He's gone. So he's fucked off to Brussels, and now he's replaced with Brian Cowan, a yes man, you would say. Well, Brian Cowan is like, people do seem to like him at this time, and he is also
like Brian Cowan.
He's a big pint man. Yeah. He's affable.
He's a big.
He is a big pint man. I mean, you know, he doesn't do a good job when he gets in charge later on, but very few people. I don't know who would have done a good job at that point.
No, you're just hiding.
We'll do the Brian Cowan series in 10 years, all right? There's no time for that. But basically,
people don't even want it.
No,
they want to talk about the radio interview.
Yeah. So this is the end of Charlie McCreevy and the sort of when I have it, I spend it. When I don't, I don't. Which was the financial advice of the country for this period up until 2004. So he's gone, and now Brian Cowan is in charge. So again, right after his elections, June 2004, the press is making fun of Bertie's yellow suit that he wears to the G8 summit. So this is the picture I showed you. I stuck it up on Instagram the other day. This is very. Remember when
he's in Europe?
Yeah, it's summertime. It's a light summer suit. Remember when Obama got a load of flack for wearing a tan suit? Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? It's our version of that. But again, this is only because, like, you wouldn't have seen this 4 years before that. It's because people are dogging on him, and now he wears a yellow suit. And Fine Gael and Labour have done well in the elections, so they're going to the Dáil, Enda Kenny, and Pat Rappett. They're getting cocky, and they just start ragging on him. And
a belly as yellow as his suit.
But he is at the G8 summit with all of the boys. He is rubbing shoulders with his best friend Tony Blair and Bush, and things start to turn around a little bit after this. I think that local election is a wake up call where he's like, right, out with McCreevy, bit of a reshuffle, let's start doing shit again. I think there's, again, after that tech bubble burst.
I legitimately thought you were going to say a band.
Well, maybe. But right, June 2004, boom, the Lewis Green Line opened. A couple of weeks later, Red Line opened. Arguably the biggest mistake they ever made, but no one knew that at the time. All right, Minister for Transport, a young Seamus Brennan, is in charge. He dissolves Aer Rianta, which was, I think, forerunner of Aer Lingus, but basically they dissolve that, and it sets up independent airports in Dublin, Cork, and Shannon. So this is, well, for whatever reason, heralded as good for business, but in echoing current events that are happening in our time, one of the last things that McCreevy does before he leaves as finance minister is give the chairperson of Aer Rianta an 800,000 leaving bonus. 800,000 in 2004. Also, they've been in the job for 6 months. But that's not Seamus Brennan's fault. So in November 2004, we haven't got time to get into that scandal.
Just a little, give you something.
This dissolving of Aer Rianta, I only put that in because it comes up with, as we mentioned in the last episode, November 2004, Ahern celebrates 10 years of being leader of Fianna Fáil. Very successful run. He celebrates 10 years by calling himself a socialist, declaring in the Dáil that Fianna Fáil represented the most left-wing government Ireland had seen in recent years. Another quote from our man, Pat Rappett. He said, "Will it mean that everyone will have to pay a fair tax? Does it mean that you'll undo the social welfare cuts and restore the rapid programme designed to transfer resources to the most disadvantaged areas of the country?" And this is also in the wake, you would say, of the bad election results. He's looking around the world and he's like, people seem to like socialism. I'm a socialist. I like the zoo. You know? There's a funny clip from Joe Higgins, who was the only... I think the only member of the Socialist Party who was taking part in the government, and he was on holidays at the time, and he came back and was like, Jesus, you should have told me before I left. By God, we must be the only two socialists in government, but now we'll go down together. Pretty good speech from a lunatic Joe Higgins. But
I do like the Bertie, you told me about that, the zoo the other week.
Yeah.
He did genuinely love the zoo.
He loved the zoo.
And then I was rewatching Love Hate, and they go to the zoo because it's the only place where you can safely have a meeting talking about nefarious.
If you see anyone walking around without kids, you know they're on the cover of shade.
journalists or whatever.
Yeah. Which is not necessarily true.
No, it's not. It could be pedophiles.
Just pedophiles. Yeah. Or Bertie. To his accolades, that was 2004, the end of that year. At some point, he's president of the EU during that year. He oversees the inclusion or introduction of 10 countries to the EU. Do you remember that when they all joined in 2004?
Biggest since the
country?
Well, I mean, the EEC was, like, what, 73?
I think this is the biggest single influx of countries.
Like,
and he was
yeah.
ahead of it during the time. Now, his friend Royston Brady, who showed up in those early documentaries, he had him run for the EU local elections. And this is kind of like, you're right, they did bad in the elections, but there is also a sense of like they were being lazy and complacent at this point. They were running lads who probably shouldn't have been running for that election. Royston, while running for an EU position, was asked what 10 countries are joining the EU this year, and he took a fair stab at it, and he was like, Yugoslavia, which at that point hadn't been a country for about 10 years. But I mean, how is he supposed to know? He'll learn on the job. Don't judge him for not knowing everything day one. Anyway,
No, not 10 years.
also that year, Cecilia Ahern published a book, P.S. I Love You.
That's so far removed.
Oh, like it would have been, like that would have been a big event that he would have known about.
Yeah. It was like during the 2016 presidential elections in America when they asked the libertarian guy, Gary Johnson, they were like, what do you think about Yemen?
Yeah.
And he just didn't know what it was. He was like, oh, you're done. You can't.
Or was it at Aleppo?
Yeah, whatever. It's just the fact that he hadn't. It was like, oh, yeah.
There was something very, it was like, it would be like asking about, what do you think about
It'd
the
be like
West
asking
Bank?
Royston, what are the 10?
So you're heading for a job in the EU. Who's joining the EU this year? Well, it was the USSR, still about.
Eritrea?
East Germany? They did what now? Oh, good for them. Well, it's also in 2004, Cecilia Ahern publishes her book, P.S. I Love You, which I always found, even as a teenager, I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that, like, his daughter wrote P.S. I Love You. That just seems crazy.
No.
Like, it's bizarre that one of his daughters is married to the guy from Westlife and his other daughter wrote, like...
It's bizarre that George Hook writes fucking sex novels.
That is bizarre. That is true. But this is also...
This isn't that bizarre.
It's kind of weird.
The daughter of a very rich, well-to-do man
wrote a very successful book and film.
Yeah, like all of Hollywood or any novel, like a lot of novels, most art is done by... I don't like the term nepo baby. I like bastard
You do
children,
love the term nepo
bastard
baby.
cunt babies. But I don't find that crazy. And that his other daughter would marry Nicky Byrne.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, that would make...
They're both
If she was any way decent at writing, she was going to become a professional writer.
Well, what about...
So how bad she would have to have been.
Well, she wrote it at 24.
I know.
I assume pretty bad.
Yeah, I never read it. I don't.
I don't know. It's
But
like it seems the film's successful.
Yeah, but the book obviously was very successful. I don't know how successful it would have been before the movie in America, but the film was worldwide.
Huge, yeah.
Massive.
Well, right, you don't think that's crazy. What about this? Imagine if Gift Grub had this to chew on, which they 100% did. But the film was out in 2007. Bertie Ahern attends the premiere, rubbing shoulders with Gerard Butler, Hilary Swank, and possibly Lisa Kudrow. There's some awkward photos of him standing beside Hilary Swank on the red carpet. It's pretty funny.
That's good.
That is good.
That would have, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. What do you think of our Taoiseach now? You've never met Lisa Kudrow.
Let me tell you about the time I was hanging around with, was it the Australian one? Danny Minogue's sister, Kylie Minogue.
Yeah.
Why did that happen? Why did I go Danny Minogue's sister?
There wasn't much for 2005. I think the only thing I really found in 2005 was a gossip magazine thing, The Mirror or something. But Mr. Ahern splashes out well over 140k of taxpayers' money on makeup since coming into office in 1997. He's taught to use massage oils to relax him and his manicures to make sure his nails are in perfect shape. However, most of the money was spent on makeup artists who charge over $1,000 a day to make him look his best. The UK Parliament was told that Mr. Blair spent on average €600 a year looking good. No, not true.
Nothing.
Also,
that's not. I could believe Bertie would have spent that.
Yeah,
that's. I'd say.
I mean, that is. He was on TV a lot. That's
this is
makeup.
97 until 2005.
Yeah.
So 8. Oh fuck! Yeah. So 8 years.
Yeah.
Ooh, 140 grand.
But like, I don't think he's asking for it himself. Like, it's just makeup that they put on you when you're going on TV.
Yeah, that's going to say, like, they would have a makeup artest in the play. You'd never know if he has a separate.
But there's a very funny tone in this whole thing of like, ho, spend money on making yourself look good as a man. Well, get him out of here.
He kind of loves himself.
Whoa.
We won't realize that that's okay for another 17 years.
Right, February 2006. A spokeswoman for Mr. Hearn says that he had consistently stated that driving under the influence is not acceptable and should not be tolerated. Thankfully, attitudes in relation to drink driving have become more well-informed and responsible in the last 20 years. This is to be welcomed and encouraged. The Taoiseach has never and would never condone or encourage drink driving in any circumstances. In June 1986, Hot Press magazine asked him how many pints did he believe he could drink before being able to drive. Bertie said, I'd certainly drink a fair few pints of Bass and be capable of driving. Whether I passed the breathalyzer or not, that's another thing.
Wait, was there breathalyzers in 86?
It'd be very hard to get me drunk on it, apparently. Whether I passed the breathalyzer or not is another thing. It'd be very hard to get me drunk on it. He also said in the same article that he'd watch his pint intake after he'd been critical of the Gardaí. So whenever he was critical of the Gardaí, he'd say for a week or so afterwards, you're kind of careful of how many pints or glasses you drink in case they do you up.
Gee.
But yeah.
It's 86, so...
Yeah, I mean...
Statute of limitation.
It is shocking that they have... But it was just a funny contrast to be like, he never... No way. Absolutely not. What about this article from 20 years ago? Well, I mean, he was drunk at the time. I mean, he'd been drinking Bass. Hard to get drunk on Bass. Not that high a percentage. But circling back to our good friend Jim McDade, in November 2002, while Junior Transport Minister, Jim McDade had spearheaded the government's anti-drink driving campaign. The penalty point system, all that sort of stuff came in around the early 2000s to bring drink driving deaths down. And McDade spearheaded this campaign. He said that some drivers still choose to ignore drink driving laws, and as a result, innocent lives are destroyed. 3 years after that statement, in April 2005, some lunatic was found driving drunk in the wrong direction down the dual carriageway into oncoming vehicles, which were forced to swerve to avoid the person's car, and eventually he was forced to stop when a haulier blocked his path. Test shows that he had a blood alcohol level of 267 milligrams, which was more than 3 times the legal limit at the time. It was none other than Pat Rabbit. No, it was Jim McDade. He was convicted of drink driving, and he was banned from driving for 2 years and got a fine of 750 quid. He was given his license back after a year for driving drunk down the wrong way in Jules and being 3 times over the limit, over the 2005 limit, which I guarantee is way smaller than it is now.
Yeah.
From the guy who started the anti-drink driving campaign.
That's like making a comedy album that's so out there in the 80s, it gets banned in Ireland.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, well, that's another episode, but we'll do another episode on Jim McDade as well, because he got divorced from his wife and she wrote a tell-all book, which is pretty interesting. But heading into 2006, Bertie becomes the longest serving Taoiseach after Eamon De Valera. And right, you're never going to beat Dev. But in that September, we head into sort of the end of the Teflon Taoiseach. So this is a nickname that he had this whole time, which, Teflon non-stick. Stuff will come up about him. Rumors, scandals, whatever, bounce off him. Nothing ever really stuck to him. Duck and dive. The Teflon Taoiseach. This is the first time that starts to chip away. In September of 2006, Ahern is faced with questions regarding payments made to him while he was Minister for Finance and related to his involvement in the Manchester-based Drumcondra AFC football club. Why is there a Drumcondra football team in Manchester? Who knows? The controversy centered around the legitimacy and source of payments. He was paid for speaking engagements in Manchester, and then it turned out that one of the guys at these engagements sold Ahern a house in a very roundabout way. It was a guy called Michael Wall.
Was this the dude who gave him a house that Bertie was thinking about. Bertie, I'll tell you this: Bertie wasn't thinking about buying that house at all.
Yeah,
Bertie,
no interest in it.
Bertie was thinking about buying another house.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden, this one came up and they said, "You know what? It's a bit smaller. It's not in the same area, but it's tough times. And you know what? We'll go in.
Yeah,
we'll go in, and I'll get Cecilia to go in and do it up for me."
Well, this is
I'm not with her. I'm not with her.
As this we'll deal with all this in the Tribunal episode that will come out. That's behind the paywall. Well, what happened was the Michael Wall, he wanted to invest in property in Dublin. Mm-hmm. And, he bought a house and said, you may as well, you need a house. You may as well take care of it. You sit in there for me. And you have the option to buy it if you want. Either way, it will be in my will to leave to you.
I won't charge you rent on it. Just for, because do you want, it'd be mean to charge. It'd be mean. You're looking after it for me until eventually you can buy it or I die and you get given it for free.
So we're going to do all that stuff in the Tribunal episode. But the things that come out of that are, it's investigating payment and corruption scandals, money towards politicians. And it all come out of the stuff we talked about in the other paywall episode, starting with Ben Dunn going and hoofing cocaine for the first time. Up his nose. But stuff starts coming out about Bertie taking payments and all these things, and he has to answer questions. And it leads to him going on RTE to give an interview with Brian Dobson in 2006. Now, did you watch that?
No.
It's very funny.
And Dobbo got the call.
Yeah. It's a fairly soft interview.
Yeah.
While you're watching it, you are kind of like, maybe, just maybe, if I didn't know anything about Charlie High, if I was living through the good times in 2006, if I just started paying in installments for my new apartment in Bulgaria, you'd look at a man and you'd be like, I want to believe him. I want to believe him, and I will. But we'll talk about the interview. More of this will come out in the next episode. But
I want to watch that. I feel like I like Dobbo.
Yeah.
Who's your man who did the interview for Roy Keane in 2002, and he does the that's the angel of death. He walks into the room, you're fucked. There is no softball questions. He's going to keep going at you. It's like Tony O'Donoghue asking Martin O'Neill questions after a loss.
He's the guy who supposedly got on to Bertie to step in on the Saipan thing. I can't remember his name though, but yes. Dobson, on the other hand,
he walks in with an RTE jacket on and you sit down for an interview, just come clean.
It'd just be like, I did it.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting interview to watch because it's the leader of the nation going on the terrestrial channels to spend 20 minutes talking about his personal finances and addressing all these allegations that are coming up about him, an innocent man. So the main thing they talk about is there's 55 grand to be accounted for. And he tells Dobson and the people that it was from good friends and it was paid as a dig out during financial troubles that he was having due to a separation. So he said he wanted to provide for his kids despite his depleted savings. So they never go through a divorce, but he makes assurances to his ex-wife and the kids that he'll
who would have surely stolen all the money and left the kids destitute,
of course,
out on the street, penniless.
The
Not
boys,
that there was anything wrong with the mother, that she was a completely amicable separation.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't trust her with a cent of my money.
Now, he says, and he says it several times, that he never asked for the money, that these friends of his, they had offered to do a banquet dinner to raise money for him. He said, not at all. They, unbeknownst to him, did a whip around to get money for him, to give him a dig out, to the tune of 55 grand. And he says many times... He uses the phrase like 4 times in this 20-minute interview where he says, it was a debt of honour. It was a debt of honour. I was honour bound to repay it.
I didn't want to take the money. I took it on the agreement. It was Jerry Brennan, Des Richardson. I didn't deal with them all. They gave me the 22,500 and I said that I would take this as a debt of honour, that I would repay it in full, that I would pay interest on it. I know the tax law, I'm an accountant, and that I would pay that back in full and on another date when I could.
So as we speak, the loans, none of the money has been repaid and no interest has been paid?
No, but the first understanding still remains that it is a debt of honour. it's a debt that I pay the interest for, and they all accept that.
As you understood
No,
it,
that was clearly a loan.
And again, just to be clear, the second 16,000, again, that's a loan, but no interest has been paid, and none of that money has been repaid.
That money has not been.
And you regard that as a debt which you
it's
discharge?
a debt of honour that I have to discharge, and
it was always a loan. It was treated as a loan. They understood it as a loan. I understood it as a loan. I was an accountant. I was Minister for Finance. I know what needs to be done tax-wise. I know what needs to be done vis-a-vis loans. It was a loan. I was always going to pay it back. Now, Dobson says this all at that point would have happened about, 10, 12 years ago. He's like, have you paid any of it back yet? It was well, no. Well, they wouldn't take the money is the thing, Brian. Well, what about the interest?
That wouldn't have been honourable.
That wouldn't be. Well, he keeps saying that he's going to pay the interest on it because it's a loan and you have to pay interest. That's how these things work. It's like, have you paid any interest? Well, like, I've said it to them many times, Brian. They've never once. I keep saying it to them. They won't take it. Now, I think they'll take it after this, but they wouldn't take it. So he kind of flips up between being like, it's a small amount, which... and he keeps talking about
home now, sick over having to take this money
I tell you, we'll be laughing about it around the pubs after this. But I said to them every day in, day out, I was like, take the money back. Now, he does say it's small amounts and he keeps comparing it to what Haughey was taking. Well, he doesn't say it by name, but he's like, compared to some Charlie, but who were taking 100 millions or whatever. And it is relatively small, but there's also the thing of, he says it's all like to settle his legal bills, it's to settle loans he took out to get over his divorce, all that sort of stuff. Keep saying debt of honour, keep saying he'll pay it back with interest. That was all his intention. Doesn't matter that he has not made any attempt to do that in the interim 13 years. But he talks about how Miriam had access to the account. They only had a joint account and she was in charge of all the finance. So a lot of it was done in cash, but only out of necessity, Brian. And some of it was done in sterling. But again, he wanted to leave his kids sterling, proper money. But basically, he talks for about 20 minutes and it does seem kind of believable if you want to believe it. Maybe he took a load of cash, or maybe he did. So he seems to have fairly reasonable explanations as to where 55 grand came from. Now, Vincent Brown, he wrote up an article afterwards where he goes through step by step all the things that Bertie said and how they were wrong, and how he also doesn't talk about the much larger sum of 80 grand that was paid to him as well, which is in the tribunal. So at the time of this, the tribunal is still private. There hasn't been any public hearings, and this stuff is kind of leaking into the press. But in the next episode, we'll see when it gets into the public domain and he really gets hammered with this stuff. This is his attempt to kind of like softball what's happening. And he denies and covers up the bigger questions that the tribunal is asking. And he kind of plays this role of like, and they're entitled to ask their questions. I welcome it. And here's what happened. Here's exactly what happened. I'm agreeing with them. I'm working with them at every stage. I'm going to pay the money back at some time. That'll be done. He just does get on TV and lie for 25 minutes. Couple of crocodile tears in there as well.
Yeah.
Debt of honour.
Debt of honour.
From an honourable man. At some point, Dobson, I know we're making fun of him.
Dead man walking.
I know we're making fun of Dobson for softballing him, but at some point, he does whip out. So the McCracken Tribunal, at the end of the report that's produced by the tribunal, Brian McCracken says, he's talking about Haughey and Lowry at the time, but he says, it was quite unacceptable that a member of Dáil Éireann, and in particular a cabinet minister, should be supported in his personal lifestyle by gifts made to him personally. A comment to which, at the time, Bertie Ahern had said, McCracken stresses a point that I have repeatedly emphasised, that public representatives must not be under personal financial obligation to anybody. He would have said this while owing at least 55 grand to multiple different people.
Maybe 135.
Oh, way more.
Yeah.
This is just in the context of what he's publicly talking about in this interview. And Dobson's like, what about that? What about when you said that 5 years after you took all this money from these lads to whatever it is you're claiming to be doing? Pay you off your bank loans.
Where you already had the money to do that.
Yeah, because he also talks about that he'd saved up a certain amount of money, which he then, whatever, it gets lost in the divorce, which isn't really a divorce. Now, we'll talk about the Vincent Brown thing because it comes out in the next, but he does the maths as to how exactly a man he can estimate what his wage would have been at the time, how he would have saved up enough money to get to where he says his savings are afterwards. If he says he spent all his money on this and then 5 years later he's got this amount of money, yeah, his salary is substantially less than that. A couple of gaps there. A couple of gaps being filled by plasterers. Oh, this interview is where Paddy the Plasterer comes from as well.
All right.
Because there's multiple Paddies he's talking about. And he does at some point, he almost slips back into like good crack pub time Bertie. And he's referring to and that payment would have come from Paddy O'Reilly, which is a different Paddy O'Reilly than the one I was talking about previously. We call him Paddy the Plasterer because, and then Dobson cuts across him was like, and what about the money?
Dobbo, no.
Yeah, but for half a second he's like, because he's doing his sad dog like is like I don't want to be here talking about these are private affairs. But no, Paddy the Plasterer. Funny story about why we call him that. It's like, well, let's get back to the money now. Taoiseach was like, yeah, well, okay.
They would have contributed at Christmas, but they were friends of mine, and they were Joe Burke, Dermot Carew, Barry English, and Paddy Riley, who was a different Paddy Riley. He's known to my friends as Paddy Riley the Plaster. He wouldn't be known publicly. But,
so the total figure now at this stage then is 38,000.
38,000.
And again, was that in the form of a gift or was that?
We'll get Bertie a pint of Bass and we'll find out where Paddy the Plaster came from. Why is he called that? I don't know.
Lost in the annals of Irish history.
Yeah, but here we are into 2006. It's October. It's after the interview. Ahern tells the Dáil that it was an error of judgment for him to accept loans and gifts for personal purposes in the early 90s. This changes the sort of ethic laws. It changes the laws that are around like gift giving and gift receiving from elected officials. He's like, all right, in fairness, I see now. I don't think it was wrong, but I can see it could have been ill-advised. And they changed the laws and like, well, luckily that's all squared away now. We don't ever need to mention the word tribunal ever again. But after all this, the Irish Times ran a survey. After he went on TV and talked about the money, Fianna Fáil approval went up. So the polls taken during and after the payments scandal, Ahern personally and Fianna Fáil both go up, their approval ratings, and there's a fall in support for the opposition parties. So not only do they go up, for some reason people go against the opposition for trying to do a good man dirty.
Well, I'd say it's even more, possibly, but a part of it...
Well, I'll give you the last that would... So 55 to 64% of the public believed that he was wrong to accept the payments, but support for his party rose to 42%. He's like, well, he was wrong, but he did admit it, like a man. 2/3 of people believed he should not resign.
Would you be... Obviously, they're not in charge of the tribunal.
Yeah.
But would you have confidence in a party who was going up against this lad and couldn't get the job done multiple occasions? And then he comes out with this just caught red-handed. Just 100% there. And you're like, you know what? If they can't even use this, like, you've got your magic beans. Yeah. You've got your magic beans. Make your beanstalk.
He's got his...
I just think that it's after all of that's in the media. We're talking about all of that, and you still look at it and go, he's gonna beat them.
I think when you watch the interview, and if you squint and just you're like, it does seem sad, and he is saying the right things, and this is a believable excuse. And he does talk about how it was a loan, he means to pay back, and blah, blah, blah. Now, in January 2008, after saying on that interview that he had dealt with the loans properly in terms of taxes, he got a letter from the revenue who were like, we can't find any record of you paying anything to do with any of this. He also said that it gets been cleared with the authorities. He cleared it in advance. They're like, again, if you could just forward us on the copy of that letter that I'm sure you've kept. But anyway, that's going to come up afterwards. That's after. That's for the next episode. A little bit of light fun. The Ogre Party, Fianna Fáil Ogre, which is like the youth Fianna Fáil party, they came up with a fun little poster to try and get people to join. Do you want to describe that for the people at home? It was very topical at the time.
Who is the character meant to be?
I don't know. Yeah. It's his head badly photoshopped.
It looks like the finger of like a Del Boy on the ill-fitting, like someone who's got dressed as James Bond for Halloween but can't fill out the suit.
Yeah.
And then it's just the worst Photoshop of Bertie's head slapped on top of that.
Yeah. But it's
Pimp My Party.
Yeah. It's the Pimp My Ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which apparently... There's very few good photos of it, but that was like a big poster that they had on it, and apparently that brought who would have, like MTV, who did Pimp My Ride?
Yeah.
Apparently that brought in like legal questions from them.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, apparently. Because they're like, we don't want to be associated with this guy. That's the wrong kind of pimp.
That's fair. And much like Pimp My Ride, they never actually fixed anything.
Yeah, there you go. Looks like your economy's gone to shit. You need a fish tank and a PS2. You know what? That actually would have fixed a lot of problems. If it's like, I'm sorry, you're all unemployed, but fish tanks and PS2s for everybody with GTA San Andreas. You're welcome. Now, in November 2006, he's in a downturn. Now, this is after he's getting hit by the tribunals. Bertie likes to be liked. Once again, people are starting to get a little bit... He's starting to get worried because the stuff that is in the media that they know about, yeah, the polls are saying people like him and they forgive him, but he knows there's much worse stuff coming down the line. So this period is sad Bertie. But during this period, he asks Bush, George W., about the CIA planes that are landing in Shannon that are almost definitely carrying people that are being abused.
I looked at the great President Bush and I said to him, I want to be sure, and he assured me. Couldn't do any more than that.
Now, this might be reading too much into it, a bit too much. To be sure, and he assured me.
He says to him.
It says to him.
And it goes to the President of America, it goes.
The great George W. Bush, it says, are you sure? And he says, to be sure. Now, that is the demeanor, I would imagine, of a man who, like, this is 2006. They've been flat out flying people in and out of Shannon for years at this point. And that's the face I would imagine of a man who's like, what do you want me to do? I asked him, he lied to my face. What do you want at me?
He's a great man.
You can't do any more than that. So, heading into 2007, there's stuff getting leaked out from tribunals. Later on in 2007, we'll see him start to really engage with them publicly. But heading into 2007, there's an election coming up. It's not looking good for Bert. Third general election seems unlikely for Bertie. This, compared to his first run, where everyone loved him, this one, a bit more political scandals. Nothing's really sticking, but the sheen's kind of worn off him. But on the other hand, the economy is starting to boom up again. The Northern Ireland power sharing is back.
2007.
Not for long, granted, but it's back up again. It's in full flow. This is pure crazy Celtic Tiger time. So it goes up in the early 90s. Everyone gets a little bit of money. There's a bit of a cool-off period around like 9/11 and the tech bubble. And then things go fucking insane again with the housing market. But people are making money again. You know, it's good times for a lot of people. The Northern Ireland power sharing is back up and going. So in 2002, Stormont collapsed. So the whole thing, he doesn't, he takes a lot of credit for the Good Friday Agreement and the power sharing thing. It lasted 2002 and then was off until 2007. But it's back just in time for election campaigns and posters. So this is a Bertie that people hadn't really seen before, because Enda Kenny and Pat Rabbitte, Fine Gael and Labour, they're supporting each other. They've agreed to support each other in an upcoming government. They are trying to form a new government together because they're both their parties are fucked, basically. So they're doing what an opposition party does. They're promising tax cuts if they get in. They're promising everything.
How could they do that? The country's fucked.
Yeah. Don't listen to them. We're just going to give you good, sensible, solid, by-the-numbers policies, which apparently also came from Shamie Brennan. Shamie Brennan goes out and says, don't expect any crazy
birthday gifts, Christmas presents, me to come to your football games as a child.
We're going out working and we're going to keep this country. Do you like the house that's over your head? Good. Get in the car. Now he goes out and gives that sort of speech. At some point after he gives that, before the budget, Bertie is pretty shook at this point, and he's like, "I don't like this. I don't like people. No, people like when I give them stuff. And right, what about if we go fucking nuts?" And instead, after announcing that they're going to have a sensible budget, he at the last minute goes, "Handouts for everybody. McCreevy's gone. It's time for everyone to get money." And him and Brian Cowan go insane again. And at this point, so it's April 2007, he's not himself. He's not doing the old handshake, hanging with Hector, going out and kissing babies campaign. He doesn't want to leave the house. He also won't tell his
all
staff.
Flustered, started kissing hands, shaking babies.
He won't tell his staff when the election is going to be called. He's kind of keeping it secret. And this is similar to the start of the story. At 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning, he heads out to Arsenal to tell Mary McAleese, who's on her way to the airport to go to the States for like some big long trip. He goes to tell her that it's time to call an election. Now, that is very unusual. Do it on a weekend. He says that it's because the president was going on holidays. Not on holidays. She was going off to America for some diplomatic meeting, which had been in the books, so it wasn't a surprise. But he shows up at 7 o'clock on a Sunday to announce the election. Now, coincidentally, the Mahon Tribunal was about to commence with its next phase, which would have involved Tom Kilmartin's evidence and involved a lot of public hearings, which we'll see in the next episode, and the Mahon episode would have brought in a lot of more of his dirt into the public eye. Mm-hmm. And he calls an election. Basically, I've seen people report the day of. That might be a bit dramatic, but basically a day to a week before this is all going to come out, he heads to the president's house on a Sunday morning and was like, you need to call an election. Government gets dissolved. His lawyers go to the Mahon Tribunal.
Did you say 7 o'clock on Sunday?
Yeah. Heads out on a Sunday morning from Drumcondra, probably on a bike with a pint of Bass in his hand. And it's like, yeah, it's time to do it now. His lawyers go to the Mahon Tribunal and say, you can't call Bertie as a witness. Yeah. This all needs to be delayed until after the election, or else you're getting sued. So this all gets put on hold for the election.
Good call.
Pretty fucking suspect, but
no, of course it's suspect, but that's what good calls are by politicians.
Yeah.
What's he going to do? Sit around, wait for all that to come out, and then see if the public will vote him in again? That's never going to happen.
That's true.
This is how you just cheat the system. You try your best, and you wait for eventual more tribunals that won't lead to anything.
There's kind of, so the story I've heard told us that he's kind of like, he's dragging along and he's out of shape and he's not fighting fit and he's worried about the tribunals. And he gets a visit from Brian Cowan, Dermot Ahern and Micheál Martin. And they get him to, because every time he's showing up at like press conferences or whatever to promote being re-elected, all the questions are just about the money and where it's coming from and all that sort of stuff. So they
where are the questions about Hillary Swank?
Yeah. What was it like standing beside Lisa Kudrow on the red carpet? But they get him to come up with like comprehensive answers about his finances that are lies, but they're good lies for the time. And it's the Rocky music playing. He's starting to get his groove back.
The children are starting to congregate behind him.
He's getting his grassroots. He
goes down Moore Street. Lads are throwing him an orange. He catches it. He eats it. He's still not running. He's just still kind of walking.
He goes into RTE and has a live debate with Enda Kenny and mops the floor with him. Mm-hmm. Now, I was going to say by all accounts, not by all accounts. Apparently, a lot of media was like dogging on him at that point. But I really lost a lot of respect for Enda Kenny after reading this. This is like the most down and out Bertie Ahern is out. He's getting dogged by tribunals. He's like, I'm done. He sounds really defeated, and then to still go in and beat Kenny in debate while all the country is like, where are you living? Where's all this money coming from? But he bloody does it. They get back in. So they only lose 3 seats from their 2002 running. They get 78 seats in. It's a Fianna Fáil victory. A big victory. So the PDs are back in. They kind of see this as people voice their opinions with their votes. People don't care about. Maybe he got some money. Maybe he did some shady dealings. Who cares? The economy's still good. It's 2007. The good times are going to last for at least another 6 months, as far as we can see. Let him back in. We forgive you, Bert. So pretty much the same standing as before. PDs are in. Differently, though, this time, he brings in the Green Party to really round out his government so that he has a strong majority, which is probably the biggest mistake the Green Party ever made in their lives, to join that government.
Yeah, I remember.
In 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah. People still blame them for what happened. Like, everything at this point is already more or less fucked. And they joined the government, and now still people will... The Greens probably won't get in again next year, and people will be like, it's because they fucked everything in 2008.
Kind of that, like, I don't know if it's true or not. If you were to like zoom out, or I don't know, but like that why would you want to go into power with a party like that? And if it is just so you can get in power, that you know they don't care about any of the things you do. Like,
to do all their green initiatives.
but they're not going to do those.
Well, I tell you now, it costs €2 to get a bus anywhere. There's bus lanes all over the place. I mean, this is more the current Green Party. But at that time, they didn't really, they weren't really able to do anything.
Say, like, Ireland currently hemorrhaging money. We have to pay money to the EU because we're not hitting our targets for greenhouse gases and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The Greens never did anything. That we're still fucked.
No, they did.
They've done little bits, yeah.
They've done lots of things.
They've done bits. But we're still behind a lot of Europe.
No, well, I think the greenhouse targets is because in the last 10 years, we were also like every tech company in the world. Do you want to put your data servers here?
Yeah, that's part of it.
That's really going to set us back a bit.
Going to be part of it.
Yeah. Anyway, listen, that's the Green Party. That's for next year's thing. They get elected back in.
But you lay it down.
Everyone's happy.
You lay it down with dogs.
Dirty dogs.
You get a good rubbing.
You do. But Bertie Ahern, the
Bertmeister.
the Bertmeister,
The machine.
the Teflon Taoiseach, elected a third term as Taoiseach, leading a rainbow coalition of Fianna Fáil, the Green Party, and the PDs, as well as a couple of independents in there for the crack. He is basically king. Probably the second most successful politician after Dev in terms of just election results. A third term consecutively.
That is, yeah.
Heading into bad times, but and that's the end of this segment. But the question, this is probably the third thing you can really lay at his feet, is to like something that he had control over and fucked. He would have known. We'll talk about this more in the next episode, but he would or should have known that things needed to happen to the economy to stop it imploding. And there's an argument to be made of like, no, if he had run on a election campaign of, raising taxes and slowing the economy down, would he have been re-elected? Probably not. But in the 2002 election, they ran on a campaign of no cuts, more money, and then immediately reversed that because it's what needed to be done. They don't do that. And arguably, a lot of stuff that was going to happen was probably going to happen anyway. But it wouldn't have been as bad. I can pretty confidently say it wouldn't have been as bad if Bertie had have been fully focused on it. Because heading into this next term, during a huge crisis point in Ireland's sovereignty, when all this stuff's happening and the economy, the global economy, all this stuff is kind of out of our hands is happening. Bertie is spending a lot of time in tribunals defending his own shady stuff. And he's not doing what needs to be done. He's the wrong man for the job. But he's the right man for Ireland's president in 2025. I am starting to think if he had left in 2004, because I think he gets offered a job to be like EU president.
Yeah, he'd be fine.
If he had just left then.
Yeah.
I mean, all the other stuff would have come out.
It'll all come out, and people used to say with John Delaney, because he was already, at the time he got caught or everything, he was already in Europe.
Yeah.
And you're like, he was so close to just being away from it. We're like, I'm not even.
Yeah. Because you see, like,
it'll all come out. You'd be fine. You couldn't, like, you can't you couldn't continue in Europe once that comes out. You can't turn around to Chirac and be like, well, I always was going to pay that interest back. Now, I haven't done any of it yet.
You couldn't have the blame of like ruining the country's economy or taking the brakes off of a Celtic Tiger economy for 5 years and then get a job as, I don't know, maybe finance advisor to the EU, like Charlie McCreevy did.
Yeah.
Like, these boys got cushy job. McCreevy went to Brussels and told people how to do finance. Yeah. McCreevy's part of the Bilderberg group. I didn't get to do any of that. Yeah. I think if he had disappeared in 2004, by the time, and say like Brian Cowan or maybe Enda Kenny, imagine Enda Kenny won that election in 2007 and he's in charge and everything comes crashing down and they're like, remember when Bertie was here?
Yeah,
remember the good times? If he had got out when the going was good, that stuff would have come out about his payments, probably. Well, it would have, but at that stage, people would be like, I hate Enda. What do you got? Who cares? He got a bit of money. Good. If he had still been here, maybe we would have got a bit of money. Maybe Michael Wall could have saved the economy.
At least someone was getting it.
Yeah,
at least someone was
good for him. What the fuck was Kenny doing? Hanging out in Mayo, making racist jokes, which we're still okay with because it's 2007.
And it's Mayo.
Yeah. Did you ever hear that?
No.
Kenny.
Did he drop the end? Yeah. I remember I was having a wee in a pub in Carlow a couple of years ago, and a lad told me that Enda Kenny hadn't been in his constituency for years.
I remember that. Yeah. Well, any thoughts on the Bert?
I think he has been in his constituency.
Yeah, no, he probably has. I saw him cycle there once. A TV program.
Well, that was good. That was a good 2 hours, is it?
Bloody hell.
Christ.
Yeah. Next episode, the last episode.
But are we going to Belfast soon, and should we tell people to go buy tickets?
Oh, by God, if we haven't already told you before, get a bloody ticket to Belfast and we'll see you there.
21st of March.
Darren Matches is going to be there.
It's going to be great. If you don't go, it's the last time we ever go north.
I swear to God. I'll collapse the government. I'll vote for Bertie. I'll do it. Anyway, goodbye.
Look, Shafter.